remember the day of my graduation like it was yesterday, but not for the reasons most people would think. Everyone around me was cheering, cameras flashing, smiles everywhere, but my dad, he didn't even look at me. He stood across the room, arms crossed, a stern expression on his face, and whispered, "Stop begging for attention." I froze. My heart sank. All those years of hard work, sleepless nights, and sacrifices, and here I was, being told I was seeking attention. I tried to smile, but the words cut deeper than any insult I'd ever heard. I wanted him to be proud, to say something encouraging, but nothing came out of his mouth except cold judgment. My mom had passed away when I was 13, and ever since then, my dad became stricter, controlling, like he had to compensate for her absence by keeping everything rigid. I tried to understand him, but no matter what I did, it was never enough. That day, as I walked across the stage, receiving my diploma, I kept my head down, my hands trembling, and felt invisible in the one person's eyes whose approval I craved most. After the ceremony, everyone wanted pictures, hugs, congratulations, but my dad didn't come near. He left almost immediately, muttering something about being busy, but I knew the truth. He just didn't want to acknowledge my achievement. I felt humiliated, and for the first time I questioned whether all those years of effort were worth it. I went home that night, dressed in my graduation gown, and sat alone in my room. My phone buzzed with messages from friends and distant relatives, but I couldn't feel joy. The house felt empty. My dad was in his study, the door closed, probably thinking I should learn my place. I wanted to scream, to tell him that I had earned this, that I had survived loss, late nights, and every challenge thrown my way. But I didn't. Instead, I cried silently, letting the tears fall on the floor while the echo of his words haunted me. "Stop begging for attention." That night, I made a silent promise to myself. I would prove my worth not to him but to the world. I would succeed on my terms. I would make him regret not seeing me when I shined. The years that followed were tough. I applied to universities on my own, without his help, knowing he would try to control or sabotage my plans. I took on scholarships, part-time jobs, and every opportunity that came my way. I remember the day I got accepted to a top university. I wanted to tell him, but I already knew what he would say. Something dismissive, something cruel. So I celebrated quietly, taking a small trip with friends, sending my applications, and preparing to leave the nest. Leaving home was the hardest decision I ever made. The night before I moved, my dad barely spoke to me, and when he did, it was a cold, "Don't expect me to be proud." I wanted to lash out, to yell, to throw every argument I had at him, but I held back. I didn't need his approval anymore. The first few years at college were liberating. I was on my own, making my own choices, finding my own voice. I studied late into the night, worked internships, and built friendships that became my second family. Yet a part of me always wondered if he would ever notice. I longed for even a small sign of pride, a message, anything that said, "I see you." But it never came. Instead, I focused on my career. After graduation, I landed a well-paying job, rented my first apartment, and slowly started building a life I could be proud of. I traveled, explored, and for the first time felt the freedom to be myself. But despite all this, I couldn't shake the shadow of my father's disapproval. Every accomplishment felt bittersweet because I imagined him dismissing it in his mind. 10 years went by, 10 long years. I had become independent, successful, and content in my own way. I had learned to live without validation from him, but something deep inside still ached. Then, one late evening, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but for some reason I answered. It was my sister. Her voice trembled, choked with sobs. "It's happening, I don't know what to do, I need you." I could barely understand her at first. She said our dad had a medical emergency. The tone of fear in her voice was something I had never heard before. I dropped everything and rushed to her side, heart pounding. Seeing her cry like that brought back memories I had buried for years. We drove together to the hospital, and along the way she told me everything. Dad had been neglecting his health, refusing checkups, ignoring warnings from doctors. And now he was in serious condition. For the first time I felt anger, fear, and sadness collide in a way that was overwhelming. At the hospital, I saw him lying there, frail, pale, and unrecognizable. I felt an unexpected pang of emotion, guilt, confusion, and something I couldn't quite name. My sister turned to me, tears streaming, and whispered, "You were right, he never appreciated anything you did. He's always been harsh on us, but I don't know how to cope." That moment, I realized that the years of silence, the cold words, the ignored achievements, it had affected more than just me. It had shaped my sister too. And now she was reaching out, needing the one person she had always looked up to, me. I held her hand, trying to offer comfort, feeling a strange sense of empowerment. I had survived his neglect. I had built a life without his approval. And now I could be the support my sister desperately needed. The irony wasn't lost on me. 10 years ago, I had been crying alone in my room, feeling invisible. Now I was the one holding someone else, guiding her through fear, uncertainty, and grief. I realized that family isn't always about validation from the ones who hurt you. Sometimes, it's about stepping up when others can't. That night, I promised myself I wouldn't let history repeat itself. I would be there for her, even if he never was. And as I looked at my sister, broken and vulnerable, I understood something profound. My worth was never in his recognition, but in how I showed up for the people I loved. That night changed everything. I stayed by her side, talking through fears, making plans, and just being present. And in that moment, I felt a strength I hadn't realized I possessed. It wasn't about revenge or proving him wrong. It was about reclaiming the narrative of my life, taking the power that had been denied to me, and using it to protect the ones I cared about. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits, consultations, and emotional conversations. My father's condition stabilized, but something had shifted. My sister, who had always seemed fragile in his shadow, began leaning on me in a way that felt natural, comforting, and healing. I realized that the pain he had caused me had, in some twisted way, prepared me to be strong for her. The past 10 years of struggle, rejection, and silence had given me tools I never knew I had. And as I held her hand, I understood the truth. The validation I had craved from him was meaningless compared to the connection I could build with her. That night, I finally let myself cry, not out of weakness, but out of release, gratitude, and understanding. I was no longer the girl begging for attention. I was someone who had survived, grown, and found her own power. The days that followed, life felt like it was in fast forward. I was managing hospital visits, coordinating care, and keeping my sister grounded while she struggled to process everything. I noticed things I had never seen before: my dad's stubbornness, his pride, and the way it had shaped both of us. I realized that the anger I had carried for so long was not just about him. It was about survival, learning to navigate a home where love was conditional, where achievement was ignored, and where emotions were dismissed. I began to forgive, not because he deserved it, but because I needed peace. I remembered my graduation, the harsh words, the isolation, and how those moments had fueled my determination. Now I could see how they had also prepared me to be resilient, compassionate, and unwavering for my sister. One evening, after a long day at the hospital, we were sitting quietly in the waiting room. My sister's head rested on my shoulder, and I felt a sense of calm I hadn't known in years. She whispered, "I never understood why you stayed so strong. I always thought you were just ignoring him, but now I see you were surviving." I hugged her tightly. Her words, simple as they were, felt like the validation I had been searching for all those years. It wasn't from him. It wasn't from anyone else. It was from someone who mattered, who had witnessed my struggle and still believed in me. Over the next few weeks, things slowly returned to a fragile normal. My father's health improved, but our relationship remained distant. I realized I no longer needed his approval. I had built a life, a career, and a self-worth that wasn't tied to his acknowledgement. What mattered was being present for the people I loved and choosing who got to influence my emotions and my happiness. I started sharing moments with my sister, teaching her how to navigate life without waiting for validation from someone who might never give it. I helped her find confidence, independence, and her own voice, and in doing so, I felt a healing I hadn't expected. That experience also made me reflect on the patterns we inherit from family, the invisible rules that dictate how we see ourselves. I realized that breaking free isn't just about leaving home or achieving success. It's about recognizing the power within yourself, understanding that your worth isn't defined by someone else's approval, and using your experiences to lift others along the way. A few months later, life began to feel lighter. My father was still distant, but the fear and resentment that once weighed on me were gone. I had taken control of my narrative. I had survived neglect, disappointment, and emotional dismissal. I had built a life full of love, achievement, and purpose, and I had learned that family could be chosen, nurtured, and protected beyond the walls of a childhood home. One night, as I was tucking my sister into bed, she said softly, "You were always my hero, even when I didn't say it." My heart swelled. For 10 years, I had longed for acknowledgement, for someone to see me. Now, in that quiet moment, I realized that recognition from those who truly mattered was far more powerful than anything my father could have given me. I had survived his neglect, and in the process, I had become a source of strength for someone else. I understood then that the pain I endured was not wasted. It had transformed me into someone who could endure, love, and guide. The lesson was clear: your worth is not measured by those who fail to see it, but by how you show up for yourself and the people you care about. Life continued, and I focused on growth, love, and creating memories with my sister. We laughed, cried, and celebrated together, and in those moments I felt a freedom I had never known before. Freedom from judgment, freedom from the need for validation, freedom from the shadow of someone else's disapproval. My father remained a figure in my life, but he no longer dictated my emotions. I had reclaimed my power, and I realized that no one could take that away from me. Looking back, I understand that the journey wasn't just about him or even about the past. It was about discovering my own resilience, nurturing meaningful connections, and choosing who has the power to affect my happiness. And the truth is, life can be unpredictable. You may not always get the recognition you crave, and sometimes the people you love most may disappoint you, but your strength lies in how you respond, how you protect the ones you care about, and how you refuse to let others define your value. Today, when I talk to my sister, when I hear her laugh, when I see her growing into a confident, capable woman, I feel a sense of accomplishment that no diploma or accolade could ever match. I had survived the past, and now I was shaping a future built on love, resilience, and empowerment. And that, more than anything else, feels like victory. So, if you've ever felt invisible, unheard, or dismissed by someone you loved, remember this: your worth is never defined by the people who fail to see it. Your strength, your kindness, your courage, those are what matter, and they shape the world around you. And yes, sometimes it takes years to realize it, to heal, to find your place. But when you do, it's powerful beyond measure. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something like this? Or is there someone in your life who's been dismissive, harsh, or unappreciative of your achievements? I'd love for you to share your story in the comments, because sometimes hearing others' experiences reminds us that we are never truly alone. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories that touch the heart and inspire strength in the face of adversity.